This is an SMT line. Yeah, obviously there's more than just SMT in your factory, but this is one of the larger data generating portions of the factory. And so we can go through it sort of step by step and say, how much data would there be if I were to collect every piece of information that this line can provide? And we'll do like a standard board. So about a 6-up panel with 6 PCBAs on there, maybe 500 total components, 5,000 total pads. So, first of all, in my printer, there's really not much data it has to report. It's got some parameters, like what's the printing pressure, stroke speed, those kinds of things. But there's like 10 numerical parameters, maybe a barcode and a program name. There's not that much data, maybe a minute and max. Okay, that changes at the SDI. At the SDI, maybe about 3 parameters per pad. Solder paste height, volume, area. I've got some offsets. How is it registered with the actual pad? And then I've got limits and then a Pascal per board. This could be like 75,000 numbers that I need to store for every single panel, as well as a pass-fail result for each of my PCBAs. And so if I were just to store this in a file, like a JSON or XML file, I'd be like a 2 megabyte file for every single PCB. It rapidly can start adding up. That's non-trivial now. Pick and place somewhere in the middle. It's by component, not by pad, so it's slightly smaller. But I want to store traceability data for each component. What was a pickup error, placement offsets, vacuum pressure, maybe the serial numbers of the feeder and nozzle that were involved, what reel it came from, the barcode there. So maybe like a few thousand strings and some 5,000 or so parameters. You really were to store them all. And not every pick and place actually can record and report, say, vacuum pressures or placement offsets, but conceptually, like some of them can, and that's sort of what you would put in there. Maybe like 100K for this. Again, the oven, there's not a whole lot of data in there. Maybe just like a set point and an actual measurement for each zone, maybe 10 to 30 different numbers. Again, small. The AOI, not quite as much as the SPI because it's by component, not by pad, but similar, maybe like a 1 megabyte file. So you put all this together and you would say, okay, if I wanted to just like save all these files on my hard drive, it'd be about 4 megabytes of data for every PCB. It doesn't sound crazy, but if I'm running at a 30-second cycle time on this line, I'm running 24/7. That's about 3,000 panels per day. It's about 12 gigabytes per day per line. I have 10 lines in the factory. I'm getting up to like 3.5 terabytes of data per month. Okay. And then, I have to store that for a year. So maybe it's like 60 terabytes. It's like reasonably large enough I wouldn't want to necessarily put it in a database. So I want to think about something else to do with it. But this assumes you don't compress the data. And this is one of the things that changed around like the 2015 timeframe, is these very good numerical compression algorithms applied to data storage. So if you compress that, this goes down from that much to about 93 kilobytes. This is like actual results from around 500 SMT lines on average. So suddenly it goes from like, oh, that's a lot of data to actually, that's not very much. That's just like a couple emails. And so you go from about 2 DVDs worth of data per SMT line, which if you were to store that all in your factory, goes back to about $22 per year for the entire factory. So what I would say here is, yes, there is a lot of data in electronics factories, in SMT lines specifically, but it's highly numerical data, right? Like it's a bunch of measurements, numbers, strings, things that have very well developed compression for them that makes it very cost effective to store. And some of these more specialized like data lakes, they actually are built on files that are pre-compressed. So actually they actually never actually get stored in an uncompressed fashion. And while it is true that like measurement data is the highest volume data of the SMT line, it's also like the most valuable. And even when you collect it all, it's still not all that much information with modern storage and modern compression.